going to find out that jumping on is a lot easier than jumping off.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know. The air is unfit to breathe. Our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
All right. Hey, what's happening, everybody? Here we are again with another episode of the ThinkStopper. We got a special little one here for you guys today. We're out of the studio. I'm in the home studio. We're in the Mala House studio over here, but we got a little something different today as far as the normal rigmarole is being in there. Mikey Slyman, my co-host, he's out and about. He's got the family. You know, tomorrow's school. We're getting everybody back to school, but his daughter's got a birthday, so they're gonna be doing that tonight. So happy birthday, the little galley. So we'll be talking with Mikey here probably tomorrow. We're gonna do a little something. But I just want to say a big shout out and thank you to everybody that has been subscribing and downloading and listening to the show. We're going to be reaching out a lot more. We're going to be able to make it so more people with Androids can listen to it easier instead of being confined to going to the website or anything like that. We're just going to be reaching out. I had a special day today. I was able to run into an old pal. I'll just let you guys know right now that I got a chance to talk to Bigfoot. That's what I told my wife. That's what I told my wife when he called me up out of the blue. Hadn't heard from him in a long time. And he told me to keep it on a low key, but I told him I wanted to be able to tell everybody I talked to Bigfoot. And he said, okay, dude. And when the time comes, you guys will know what I'm talking about. But, yeah, man. And I'm going to say it's going to be a couple of months out. I hate to leave everybody with like this cliffhanger, but as soon as I'm able to leak anything, I will. I just want permission. I have this dude's full respect. So just let it be known, man. Your boy Trez talked to Bigfoot. All right, so that's on the down, but we're going to be getting shirts out, too. We're going to be getting some shirts going. So, again, guys, first 100 subscribers. Damn, I gotta ask my buddy. I gotta ask the homie George what the hashtag was, because I forgot. I want to say it's ThinkStop sub is what I did. I guess I'll have to look. But, just, go on social media. Like and subscribe to the podcast, ThinkStopper. You can go to ThinkStopper.com and do it there. Go to iTunes right now. Those are the two spots. Also, or go to the YouTube, which has the podcast there, but we're also going to be getting some video going. But go, and then from there, social media, make a post and hit, I'll just, if it's not, I'm going to make it again. But I think we'll do ThinkStopper. We'll do ThinkStopper sub or ThinkStop sub. We'll do ThinkStop sub. This seems easier, right? ThinkStop sub. Fuck, I don't know. We'll find out. I'll make it official. I should probably fucking look right now. It's got to be somewhere out there. Anyways, we'll figure that out. I'll get the official particulars when I post this one up. You guys can just ignore this rambling right there. But here's one of the things I will say. We're gonna get some shirts going. We're gonna get that out. You know what I mean? Fuck. How do you look up hashtags on this fucking thing? Anyways, yeah, so we'll get that happening over here shortly. Now, guys, I got a special guest here. I've been trying to get this dude on, but he's been on the move. He's been a busy guy out there in the research world, as well as paranormal and just deep investigation in any and everything. Got a little controversial side too. He likes to talk about the things that we like to talk about, or things that's not off the table for us over here. But he likes to get into the flat Earth. He likes to get into different ways of looking at the world. I know he's got a better description of himself over here, but a gentleman that I've known for a good little stretch. I've actually had a paranormal a couple actually experiences with, but my buddy Miklo Tesla, everybody.
Hey, how's it going? How's it going, everybody out there? Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for the kind words. We've known each other for a long time, and I remember that experience too. Well, yeah, a couple of them. You're right. Yeah, man. We'll get into some stuff.
Definitely, dude. Definitely. Yeah. This is like the positive side of like social media and Facebook and stuff like that. I met Miklo in a I don't know if it was even a group or if it was just a post on Facebook. Something somehow, some way. Basically, I don't know exactly the post or anything, but defending each other's like position against people who were just very close-minded to the argument, and then I can't remember.
We ended up both being like from Las Vegas at the time.
Yeah.
That we started talking like, dude, you're in the area? Because I remember that.
Yeah, because I was like, dude, and then I used to have a podcast. It was called The Courtesy Flush Show, and I was like, bro, I'd love to have you on and let's talk. And that's how it all kicked off. How we met was via Facebook, and then not even that long after, you guys had Paranormus pop up. And you were like, "Hey, dude, you want to come out and do a comedy show for a benefit, for a fundraiser for the
Goldfield High School restoration?" Yeah. You donated a comedy set to the cause on the stage. I remember that.
Yeah, and that was like one of the dopest backdrops ever, dude.
Yep.
Telling jokes on the flatbed of a truck, or a flatbed.
It was two
trailer.
flatbeds next side by side. Oh man, yeah, I remember that night.
And then the high school, the haunted high school behind us was the backdrop, and the lighting was all fucking, there was lights that really gave it that look. I mean, it was great. And then like the people, it was a small crowd. It was a big area that we had,
yeah.
But everybody was into it. Everybody was supportive. But dude, the audience is like huddling around like trash can fires, dude. It was fucking great. You know what I mean?
It was cold.
It was cold, but it was dope, dude.
Yeah.
But so me and another comedian, Bobby Stotts, we went up there and we performed, and then that's when we really met you. We had a couple of discussions, but that's when we hung out for the weekend, and we just we did some cool shit. When we were up there, and we had some paranormal experiences. But yeah, then things like we met. That's where I met Justin, and that's where I met Chef Dan,
and
Cushman, and then his son Zach. Well, here's the thing too, guys. Miklo is a part of this group. They're called Ghost Town Operations, and they do paranormal investigations, but they also do something that I think is like fucking killer and over the top. They do Dinner with a Ghost, and that's what you guys were doing when I first met you. Is that still the thing?
Yeah. We've been bringing dinner with a ghost across the country.
Yeah,
for the past,
dude.
few months since.
You guys have been on one hell of a run, dude.
Yeah, since May. And it's mid-January almost. Yeah, it's a while, and I'm getting ready to fly back to the East Coast right now in a couple weeks. And yeah, that's what we've been doing. We've been a team for, I think like 7. I've been a member of the team for like 7 or 8 years, but it goes back like 15 years, a long time. And that was when I moved to Vegas. And that was when I met you, like all at that same time, because the first year I joined, I had lived out here and we were doing our thing. And yeah, man. And you met up, we met up in Gold Point, Nevada once too. And we saw bench get kicked. Bobby and John might remember that. It was unexplainable type experience, that we all didn't see coming because it was late at night, just in a campfire, and some benches. And
yeah, dude, that was at the. We had a day of hiking around on mushrooms. We were hiking around all day. Or did you guys take them? I know me and Bobby did. I don't know.
That's incriminating.
Oh, I know I did. I know I took some. I can't speak for you, but I took some mushrooms when we went hiking, dude. Because I like to get in touch with nature when I'm out there and shit. But yeah, that Gold Point is a different one. Actually, I want to get into that a little bit. But I want to talk about Ghost Town operation, dude, because so you guys had that, right? In Justin Semak, he was kind of the organizer. At least that was the guy I had to go and talk to, right? When I first, you're like, go up, talk to my buddy Justin. He's got a room for you and all that stuff like that. Which I have stories about that room. Well, not so much me, but what went on that. And so we met up with Justin, and he points us out, he gets his rooms, all stuff like that, and we go and do this thing. But you guys were, you were kind of doing like your version of it, but it was up there. But you do these paranormal investigations. You go to these places where, that's known activity. You find these, you have to get pointed out by people, or you already know where you're going. But then you guys do this like 7-course fucking meal, right? You guys do like this nice little spread, right?
Yeah, man. It was good dinner, and the table's set up in a way, to trigger whatever might be out there. And there's a place set for a ghost that the chair remains empty, and we put a plate there in front of him and everything, So we've got some pretty interesting stuff that way.
So yeah, you set up like stuff that can sensor the heat, or is it like infrared?
We have thermometer. We have various tools of the trade, and some react better on some nights than others on other nights. And
dude,
it's always different.
like it's easy for somebody to be, oh, that's malarkey, dude. But as I'm finding out, like there's like magnetic energy. There's stuff that just is like that's just a part of our life, and that affects instruments, that affects the severity of how something is. So I get that. I understand, and I get that. And I went into this whole thing, like I've already had experiences and stuff like that, But when I went into this, I'm kind of a little bit more of adult-minded and really separated from that stuff. So I kind of had a little bit more of a skeptic, kind of view and stuff. But no, we had an experience over there. We'll talk about here in just a second. But here's one of the things I will say about your guys' like deal, dude. Like, I thought like when I first went that it was just going to be kind of willy-nilly and stuff. Everybody was very professional. Everybody was very serious and like, open-minded and respectful towards like everybody and everything like that. And then the other thing is like when it comes to the dinner deal, the spread, right? The layout and the spread. I tell people this because I get people on my tours, I do the tours of the dam and all stuff. And I tell people on the tours, I'm like, yeah, I know these guys, they do this thing. And I tell them about, these stories. And I go, you see the spread that they put up? You would not expect that at all from these fucking dudes. Like, you're looking at these dudes, you're like, oh, these are some scruffy fucking, you know what I mean? Like, these are just some, like, just regular old boys. But, dude, some of those dinner setups, man, I'm like, bro, that's like stuff that, some of the layouts, the plating and everything like that, and the some of the pictures that I seen Justin put up, I was like, that's like you're going in, you're pinky out, buddy. You know what I mean? Like, you need to show up with like white gloves on and a tux and a bow tie. You know, like it looks pretty formal, dude. Is that like am I being tricked here? Is that the real deal?
You know, we try to do it right, you know. So if we're gonna drive all that way and you know invite people there and
well, yeah, I mean, because you're not just doing it. I mean, this is like a thing. Like people pay for it because they're paying for the time, the money, the effort, the food, the you know, the energy, the equipment.
Yep, and we've done other stuff like residences and places where nobody, you know, or places where people live and stuff. You know, we get approached to do that a lot, a fair amount, and we like to stick with historical locations and raise preservation money through paranormal tourism to help these places exist. You know, like the high school in Goldfield is, you know, in bad shape and could really use some repairs, and we've helped generate a lot of money for places like that. And you know, on this tour we stopped in Globe, Arizona, and we went to the old Globe jail, which is one of the last like Wild West jails. You remember when I went through there, we were talking on some of the pictures and stuff in the bathroom where it looked like a bomb had gone off in this bathroom, something like a post-apocalyptic movie. And you know, we served dinner there, and we brought people through tours of this old jail, you know, built in the 1800s. And man, some of the stuff that happened there, you know, and it's been a fun ride, man. It's definitely been great. And you know,
where's which one on this last little tour? Because you've been going, like you said, you went all over you've been going all across the country doing this. You guys been on a nice little tour, been nice little run. Where's the spot that's kind of well, you had the most activity or you had the most response? Or one that
Arizona was definitely good, that jail. But you know, what's kind of a standout city in all the places we went was definitely Gettysburg, because Gettysburg, it's like a way of life for people out there. You know, I guess it would be like Bigfoot. You know, like if you go to people in the Pacific Northwest, you know, a lot of them have accepted that the rest of the world doesn't understand, but if you're there, it's kind of a way of life. Like, you know, like
what are you talking about? Ghosts, like paranormal activities?
Yeah,
like
that's how Gettysburg is like the ghost equivalent, where everybody there is a witness. You know, everybody already knows. They haven't maybe followed where the rabbit hole leads so much because they've already like grown used to it. And they're also a very historical town, you know.
So you're saying that like ghosts is commonplace type thing, like having sightings, so people aren't like it's not anything that's like as wooing as like from like an out of town or having an experience.
Right. That's why Gettysburg stands out in all these cities we've been in.
You're like, oh yeah, you saw the little girl run across the bridge. Yeah, everybody's seen that girl. Like, no, you know what I mean? Like, whoa, okay.
The whole way of life out there in the Lincoln Square and everything, like where the Gettysburg battlefield happened. You know, it's historically oriented, and there's a lot of, you know, ghost tours, a lot of psychic shops, and a lot of, you know,
a lot of people, because there was a lot of death there.
A lot. And,
yeah.
And so there's you know, that's why, one, there's a lot of history there, and two, there's a lot of paranormal activity there. And
is there any connection with, because that was, look at this, Siri just popped up out of nowhere. Right? That was crazy.
See?
Fucking chill out.
Gettysburg Ghost gave us a nod.
Fucking A, right? Just fucking popped up. But is there like any known, like, say, quartzite or any like kind of mineral that, you know, because that was one of the things that we were discussing up in Goldfield, was that, you know, the high paranormal activity that, you know, that you get up there tends to lead to and also other places like quartzite or like mineral, like
being like a deposit there, and that aiding in paranormal activity happening,
kind of being like maybe a vibrational, like a channel or something, you know.
You know, I never thought about it quite in that way, but that reminds me of something I felt for a while, is that it ends up being citywide in my experience. Like, yeah, you could have activity in a certain building, but it doesn't just stop at those walls. Where it's happened in my life, not just in the investigations I've done, but just the experiences I've had living life, they happen to be in areas where it's like El Cajon is a suburb of San Diego that I've lived at for many years, and it's named, that means the drawer in Spanish. It's a valley, in these mountains, San Diego, and they named it the drawer. Well, I've had a lot of activity there, and a lot of, important events have happened for me there. And it wasn't just one building, like the whole valley seems to, well, it's also a UFO hotspot. If you look up top California.
There's like, is there like, now you got to get to the maps and the ley lines. Is it like an energy sector?
See, maybe it's that. Maybe there's a certain mineral or something allowing it to happen. Maybe gold can do something like that.
Totally.
It helps, things
spill
over.
There's proof, there's evidence of like certain things, even in the modern world, are actually built in certain places just because there's like known energy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like it's there, or if you're looking at like the certain, the maps with the ley lines and all that stuff, you would know that there's supposed to be some kind of like I forget what it was that I watched, but there's people that have broken this down, and they go all through like where government buildings are built and all this stuff, and they're like, look where these energy grid, like, and these and the things is like these ley lines, were laid down in like long time ago. It's not like something that was just like that was there before these structures were there.
It's almost like a spider web of like energy fields.
Well, it's like it's kind of like almost like those that are initiated and in the know, maybe people of in certain levels of like a Masonic order or whatnot, that they're in the on the business side contracted to build these places, to do these things, or maybe to find these locations. They use that knowledge to serve the purpose of whatever bettering. I'm just this is all speculation, but this is
I think
stuff
you're onto something. And I think how the pyramids, and some of these other places like Stonehenge, like how they were lifted or how the stones were cut, or how they were transported, the ley lines probably plays into that somehow. These fields,
especially if they're in like levitation, right?
Exactly. Or
vibrational code, like
something about these areas, where these temples and monuments are built, because they're at ley line intersections.
Have you ever heard of the hewing technique?
I've never heard that one.
You never heard of the hew? H-U? And it was something that the ancient Egyptians used to do, and it was a way of calming themselves. But they said that if they had enough people hewing, and they would do it for hours on end, it would create a vibration to where they could levitate objects and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. I've read about those phenomena before.
And they would go like hew, but they would just have like thousands of people like hew, like doing it. It's like a breathing technique. It's called hewing. I learned about this a long time ago on fucking listening to Art Bell.
Yeah,
he had a guy on talking about the hewing technique.
I've never heard of it under that name, but with dudes like David Icke, how we've met in the first place, what he was getting at as like a scientific consideration or a scientific outlook, he described humanity like an ocean where if you go in and you pull up some of the water droplets, those droplets are the individual, but when they return to the ocean, they become the whole ocean again. And he described humanity in that way, like what
from consciousness.
Yeah,
the
what
ocean
we would
of
describe
consciousness
as the collective unconscious.
We're the raindrop right now.
Yeah, and it's like a group dream, and that's why the rules aren't as solid as you think they are, because it's made from imagination in the first place. It's just a group imagination.
My life is changing right now. My life is going through a process right now where, from just the power of thought and what I'm willing to, put my energy and focus into, and what I'm not willing to not do, and like letting go, it's changed my life, dude. And that's all off of like this whole consciousness thing. You're saying the rules that we think, right now, dude, right now this year, leading into this year, I've made a conscious decision, and things have changed, and like law of attraction, things have been coming my way. And not where I expected, not how I expected, and not on the level of like what I'm really, focused on, or what I want to achieve. But dude, that doesn't matter. It's like what I'm putting, what I'm asking, what I'm putting out there, what I'm believing in myself in, and then what I'm also letting go and just saying fuck it.
Yeah.
The universe now knows, and then I'm just doing my thing. But stuff has been coming to me, and that's a win, dude. That's what I'm talking about. Like now to get what I ultimately want. This is how it has to start. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's the thing about consciousness and all this that's going on, in the world, is all the shit that we have, all these distractions, all these divisions, is more and more of a fucking way of fractioning us off, shattering our fucking our consciousness, and turn it into fucking a millions of pieces, instead of it being like one vibrating fucking unison thing. And my experience is like I get in and out of that. But dude, I told you about the whole letting go on what I wanted, and then we end up getting this, finding this rental property, and it sounds like, oh, it's just a rental, but dude, it's exactly what I fucking wanted,
Yeah.
But and then my friends and stuff coming and going, it's just been easier to. But that's the beauty about, I believe in, like David Icke and the message of that, like about consciousness, dude. Like
things don't work how you think they do. I mean, on a certain level they do, but there's a whole lot more to the story when you go deeper. And when we're talking about paranormal experiences as an adult, and a logically thinking person, and somebody that's intelligent and has read and cares to know, a lot of paranormal experiences, they get shelved, like at least in my life. So that's what David Icke kind of helped remind me of. Like, dude, you've had a lot of unexplained experiences going back since you were a kid that you just shelved because you couldn't make rational sense out of. I believed in the mainstream science point of view. I graduated high school on time and went to college, studied electrical engineering I was from that viewpoint. I believed in evolution and all of these norms.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? Like, when you have a different opinion, people think that you were just completely, like you weren't in with that. You know what I mean? Like, when you're questioning stuff, you're like, oh, you're just some crazy, like you were raised to be. It's just weird, dude, because.
Yeah, I wasn't born this way.
No, 100%. I wasn't. I was not born this way, dude.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying it's like I was a mainstreamer, dude.
Exactly.
I was. But the only thing is it never lined up for me. It never lined up. I always had questions. I always
It's incomplete. It has a lot of great truth, and there's that education isn't a disadvantage. If you have it, but the overall direction that they blow the wind in, like that conclusion of, Einsteinism, and this is the solid world, and to become pure energy, E equals MC squared, to solve for energy. And that viewpoint on physicality, that limits us by thinking the conversion from one to the other is this huge sum of numbers. But people do it like what you're talking about with their chanting, elevating stones. Something that happens, I learned about firewalking, where in America it's presented as just a joke. Like, you can't just light a fire and be like, let's do this in the backyard and walk on fire without your feet getting burned. But that's not how the ancient world does it. They do it as part of their annual celebration for whatever their, deity or their faith or whatever, their cultural outlook is, they have an annual celebration with the whole village in on it, like hundreds of people, and it's part of, huge. So their minds are all on the same page and overpower the waves of possibility.
Oh yeah, well
temporarily.
They're able to get into a place where you literally your thoughts, your beliefs change the physicality of your body and stuff. And there's that M. Night Shyamalan movie called Split.
Oh yeah,
I just happened to watch it recently because I did like Unbreakable, and there's some things in Unbreakable that actually like kind of relate to my existence. Like it's really weird. It's like I identify with that character, not like in a superhero sense, but like in the way of like I've been very fortunate, you know what I mean, in like car accidents and stuff like that.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean, like and then like water's what's almost killed me. It's weird. So anyways, I'm watching fucking the movie Split, and it's about this guy with not multiple personality disorder. That's the thing that they're arguing. Is it multiple personality or is it DIDS, dissociative identity disorder, right? DIDS that's something that's definitely not mainstream. It is something that's
I've never heard of it before. You telling me right now?
Well, DIDS is the work of was brought out and brought to the surface in this regard by Fritz Springmeier.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him before.
Talking about and splitting the personalities through trauma-based mind control, the MK Ultra, but also the satanic side of it, of like the torturing for the adrenochrome, you know what I mean, and doing all this stuff. But the thing is, in what has proven, and this is actually, and they cover this in the movie, but it's proven in science that the power of the brain by the people from dissociative identity disorder, there's people who are fucking taking drugs and they're eating like crazy and like doing stuff like that, and then the other personality has there's no effect of the drugs or the food that would have spiked, that made them high blood pressure and stuff. They're taking on a completely different fucking thing. They talk about it.
Like the placebo effect, your mind believing one thing and it showing in the body, or hysterical strength when the jack under a 2-ton truck slips and the truck falls on a loved one. People have been able to lift this.
Yeah. The grandma lifting it up,
right? No. Or granddaughters, and it's happened to a lot of different people, and it happens fairly often.
I was gonna say in the movie, the guy like changes his physicality, and to the point where he's got like superhuman strength. Now I'm not saying, or mentally he does it. I'm not saying that's what you could do, but truly, you can change yourself. You can change the world around you by what you do. And people are like, "Oh, well, that means you just quit eating. You just quit eating this, or you just quit doing that." You go, yeah, but do you see where that comes from? That's the change from the mind that started up there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's like some people they have to be told they have to do all this stuff, and they gotta have the heart attack, they gotta have the diabetic coma or what. They have to have something that will get them to change, but then they change. But the thing is it's in the brain. The brain is what does it. That's what changes, and that's what changes the reality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's a tough concept to grab, but back to David Icke, back to that stuff. That it's so crazy, dude. That's just such a small fraction of what he does, and how wide open,
right.
How wide open that. But here's one of the things. And I want to get back to David Icke, and I want to keep talking about David Icke, but I want to get back to some of the paranormal stuff.
Okay.
All right, but that's where you have this with the whole thing with the consciousness, right? And then this is where this is where they think he's crazy and all stuff. But this is where you get into the reptilians, because of you have these, and we can talk about them, space travelers, or you can say they're interdimensional beings. Whatever it is that's there, there's actually something there that is trying to control this realm that we can't see, but we're affected by. You know, and that's an attack on our consciousness. And he talks about that, and then it gets into the physicality with all stuff. But I want to kind of get into that, dude, because I want to get into the chit to hurry and all that.
I
shit,
think you
dude.
really nailed it when you talked about people having near-death experiences before they could change, and it being something in the mind. Because if you truly believe something, if you have a worldview that divorces you from possibility of that kind, breaking the rules of the Matrix, for lack of a better expression,
Right.
If you have a worldview, if your cup's already full, and this is what is possible and impossible, this is how it all goes down, that's what is standing in the way from facing evidence that contradicts it. If it's truly something you believe, if it's truly something that's all you have room for at that point in life, that was the hurdle. It's that you do gotta truly know. I mean, you could tell this to somebody. Somebody could read something I wrote, or vice versa. And it's when you truly know it, when things change, and that's the hard part. I mean, a lot of us, we think more than we know, and they're two very different things. And
No, that's true.
that's what David Icke helped shake up for me. That impossibility of paranormal was now like, you understand the shape of the manipulation that's keeping you from facing it. And that's the situation we're in. There's that saying, if you're easily offended, you're easily manipulated.
100%.
The same goes for flattery and this educational system. It flatters our intellectual vanity. It tells us that this is what smart people think. This is the truth. Everybody knows that. And
Yeah, now you get into the group think.
yeah, and it makes us feel smart. It makes us feel like we're on the winning team. It makes us feel comfortable. Like
we feel accomplished, along with it's funny, is like there's this whole thing about Doug Stanhope talking about against nationalism. He's like, you guys are it's that nationalism's just you taking credit for something somebody else did, your grandfathers did or something like that. In my view, nationalism is a collection of the same core values, but can be shared in different expressions. You know what I mean? The right to freedom of speech, the right to pursue your own happiness as long as you don't fuck anybody else up, that kind of thing. That's where nationalism is to me, but it's been kind of co-opted into this whole, flag waving, fucking, that type thing.
Yeah.
But when you get into, the whole groupthink thing, now you're getting into mob rule. Now you're getting into, as we talked about earlier before we started the podcast, where, and this tends to be, and I'm going to say this to the atheists. I'm going to say this to the atheists. I'm going to say this to all my science people. If you're not constantly questioning things and you just start believing things, that's the work of somebody else's. You're basically their science is the priest class. It's a religion. You know what I mean? You're now just saying, that's the whole problem with like the pharmaceutical companies. Everybody's just believing the white coats. You know what I mean? They're not looking at the research. They're not even reading the inserts of medications. You know what I mean? That is the priest class. Now, I'm not saying you need to go run your tests and this, that, and the other thing, but you need to just stop believing everything just because it comes. That's an illogical fallacy. That's an appeal to authority. Okay, you know what I'm saying? That's the antithesis of the ThinkStopper. You know what I mean? You don't follow along. Is you stop and you think. You give it a critical view. And you know what? I was. Just like you said, I was mainstreaming, dude. I was pro-vaccines. But I was like, you ain't going to stick me with no needle because I don't like needles. But, get your kids vaccines. Then I started seeing my friends' kids getting fucking fucked up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I started doing my own research and stuff. But the groupthink with that's the biggest one. That's not the biggest, but that is a big one.
Yeah.
And that is religion, because these people aren't even looking into. So, you know what? Here's the thing, dude. If the Mormons maybe started their own vaccines, you think people would start looking into it because they love shitting on the Mormons? If the Jehovah's Witness, or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right?
It's like a double standard.
It's totally like they'll let all this shit slide and they'll be, oh, it's in the name of science. But, dude, the stuff that people go off of. Okay, now this is the thing. They go off of, again, more logical fallacies, because in the history, they'll be like, oh, polio this and all that. The guy that even invented the polio vaccine said it was on its way out, and then there was a spike for another 20 years after the vaccine goes into effect mainstream.
Money's definitely,
And
part of that system.
Well, as I say, clinical researches, dude, they're prescribing pills, right? For a lifetime, when they only done no more than 90 days of fucking research. They don't even do 120 days on a lot of these things of research. It goes to 90 days. Oh, yeah, it's good. And now all of a sudden you got to worry about bleeding ass and shit like that. Yeah. But,
and a lot of those cures don't work,
No, they're Band-Aids.
Yeah. And
that cause other problems.
That's where, when you start looking at natural cures, the reason those things work is because of that nature of reality we were talking about. When you're looking at energy fields, it's not just a tangible apple with the juice and the skin and the core. Organic apple has a natural energy field around it, and it's that you're consuming. That's the real, and that helps you cure these diseases that the pharmaceutical companies can't cure their way, because that's the nature of our life essence. And reconnecting with natural and organic foods is strengthening our ability to get in alignment, energetically, and get healthy. And that's what things like acupuncture,
vibration.
Yep. Acupuncture understands that, the dissociative identity disorder you were mentioning, how the rules of possibility are bent because we're all these water droplets in the ocean. Like, yeah, we can't overpower the waves of the whole ocean by ourselves, but momentarily and in an isolated situation, in a small area, not the whole ocean, but in your pond of it, you could temporarily bend those rules. And that's, that changes your worldview when you really know that. I mean, it's one thing to hear that, but when you've experienced something like a near-death experience, or when you've lived a strange occurrence, or when you manifest something, or that energetic viewpoint of the meaning or of the nature of life, that changes your whole perspective on things like medicine. And now you have room for paranormal experiences in your worldview. And that's what he helped change for me, is that I literally didn't have room for it. That's why I couldn't remember him. And when he brought in my horizons,
David Icke, you're talking about, right?
Right.
Okay.
David Icke.
Just to bring that back around.
He brought in my horizons, and he basically, it's not so much what he told me, it's that he told me I don't know shit. Like how I think things work, and the limits of possibilities, the boundaries of reality and things like that were nowhere near.
He put in, for me, he definitely put into words a lot of shit that I already knew or felt, but I didn't have any, he kind of put that stuff in, because I've always been into the power of the mind, you know what I mean? I've always been into hypnosis, all that stuff, meditation. I'm a TM guy. I do my 2 20-minute meditations every day, fucking my transcendental meditation.
That's cool.
I got my mantra and stuff. I deviate from the thing. I find out what works for me. Like they tell me to do 20 minutes. I do like 15. Sometimes if I do 20 minutes, it's just like too long. Like I fight to stay, you know what I mean? But I just let my body do it. But anyways, and that's helped me out tremendously for thought
I bet it has.
energy. But I've always been about that, but David Icke has really like pulled that shit in, but put it more into words. But here's the thing: is like now, you have your mainstream, right? You have your stuff, you have this history, then you have a guy like David Icke that comes out and he just throws at all this crazy stuff, and he's talking about these lizard people and stuff. But the thing is like there's a fight for this consciousness. There's a fight for this vibrational code. In the physical, real quick, in the physical form, it finds itself in the DNA of some, and it finds itself and these certain bloodlines and these certain things that all kind of have this connection, you know. And this is where we get into Jesus almost. We get into the pharaohs. We get into we get into the royal crown. We get into, you know, all these different kingdoms all across. Like everything kind of funnels into this vibrational thing of going back to a lizard god, or I don't want to say a god, but a lizard people. You know, a reptilian race that supposedly has come here and has woven their DNA, or, you know, manipulated their DNA with the human DNA, or what I believe, hominoid, right? That we're talking like a Bigfoot individual, a giant that was probably indigenous to this planet, and I think they played a game of you know, mix and match and try to find out, because when you know we get into Tessarian, Michael Tessarian, we get into that type of stuff when they talk about the Bible quotes of like, we'll remake man in our image, and they will, you know, we'll make them to venerate us and serve us and da 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 da. And he's like, what are you talking about, remake? You know what I mean? And he's talking about the genetic manipulation of who was already here by this reptilian race. And I was going to say, and within that, you know, the different types, like, you know, what are we, a Mark II or whatever, you know, I don't know how that like stuff works, but then they have to put in, and this is what's known, and everybody knows this, that's there in science, and it's a brain that's kind of not really explained, but we have the R complex, we have the reptilian brain, and that's what R stands for. That's our fight or flight, you know. But they said like that didn't make its way into, you know, the biology up until like a certain point in human beings, you know, the whole splitting of the brain and all that stuff like that, right? But
I think what you're touching on is that it's shocking to learn, you know, when you could not look down, but you could see religion for some of the falsities. They're a little bit more obvious, you know, like the corruption and stuff in organized religion. But a lot of us, we run into the arms of the mainstream academic world. Like that's a good alternative, but it's out of desperation, and it fragments you in a sense where like church and ancient scriptures, like those things, they speak more to the heart, and they're written more with symbolism. They're written more like written hieroglyphics, like a picture book, but in words, you know. So a lot of that interpretation is controlled and told to us. We don't ever look at it for ourselves, but that's when you get to these deeper levels of it. But like you were saying, with human origins and the reptilians and things like that, and if we're the first progeny of, you know, that energetic viewpoint of the nature of life, again, it changes what we would consider an alien. It's now a different model of alien, where we're not talking about a physical get in a rocket ship and burn a bunch of rocket fuel to go to another star and a planet and meet an alien from that. I'm talking about like another radio station type of alien, where it's here in this
it's
space.
Interdimensional.
Or extrasensory, I like to call them, like, because they're just outside our audible range, like a dog whistle. So, you know, everything changes when you look
like,
at
and
it.
that's another thing that David Icke pointed out. You know, he was like, "Hey, look, we have what we see, like 7% of the light spectrum or something like that," and he like broke it all down and stuff. And he goes, "Why?" He goes, "We know this now, but he goes, why are we acting like we're all hooty hoo when the ancients knew all of this shit?"
Yeah.
Without their technology that we think that, you know, we have. He's like, how did they know there's only so much of this? How did they know all this different stuff? You know what I mean?
And that too, the historical narrative of when we showed up in the fossil record, supposedly, and when we got modern for the first time, you know, doing what we're doing right now, sitting in a comfortable home, having a chat with electronics in the room. You know, what if they were doing that 20,000 years ago, but we're destroyed and we got re-advanced? You know, that changes everything.
Well, here's one of the things that you talk about. I believe, you know, like kind of like an Atlantis, and like there's all that stuff. But I was like, here, I think there comes a point. I think there comes a point where you're gonna have to. Here's the thing: when you start seeing when we're like starting to write things in stone, when we're starting to put like historical stuff in stone again, I think that's when we're gonna really see the end of everything, because they're preparing for it to be wiped out again. Because right now we're using all this electronics, dude. All this stuff right now that we're using, there's a potential when the power goes out or there's some kind of cataclysm, all this history, all that documented stuff is gone. If there's a flood, there's a fire, those books, they're gone. But the stone's still there.
Yeah.
And those who fucking had the foresight, and people think it's primitive technology, those might have been people that knew the fucking shit was about ready to hit the fan. Fucking write it down here, because you know what I mean.
See,
and I'm not talking about Native American drawings. I'm talking about architectural sculptures and dwellings and pyramids, and you know what I'm saying. I'm talking about stuff that is built with stone, because anybody that knows anything is that shit lasts forever. You know what I'm saying? And the shit that we have, so there was that level of intelligence that was already here,
right?
And if they're making laser precision stuff, you know what I mean, if they're making laser precision as far as their the stuff that they're doing, there was an advanced technology that has been wiped out.
Yeah.
And I think whatever, real quick, whatever, I know people are like, dude, he's probably just talking and talking. But whatever's
no,
there.
that's good stuff.
But whatever's there, right, as far as left is in the history, now those that are in the know, that's the fight to get that shit. You know what I mean? It's like the Bush family. They're all tied in with all that crazy bloodline and all that stuff back to the royal crown.
Yeah.
And what do when they fucking when they eviscerate Iraq? They raid the museums and they take all the historical stuff that those bloodlines think they have claim to. Ancient Samaria.
That gets really trippy. The human, see, that's the thing. We have interdimensional or extrasensory life forms that are like aliens, reptilians, whatever you want to call them, interfacing with this human world, and they do it through the elite. These families. I mean, I know you already know that, but
oh yeah, well, a lot of people that are a lot of people are going to be listening. They don't know. They might dabble, but like there's a whole thing tied in with the British Crown and these reptilian races, and all that stuff goes back to, it traces its way through this amazing history, these bloodline histories, but it will eventually go to the pharaohs, and then it kind of makes its way to Jesus, the bloodline of Christ.
Oh yeah, man.
And then that kind of gets muddled when you get into, is it the bloodline of Christ, or is it these alien visitors?
They also, that royal family, Egypt and the bloodline of Christ, and up to this day, a lot of the people that rule the world, they're obsessed with astrology, and how you were talking about writing
and
in
numerology.
Stone, and numerology, but how you were talking about something written in stone being permanent. Astrology is in some way like that too, because it's the one system we could trace and track back over huge spans of time, and like the having a certain age, like a representative of, we're in Pisces. Jesus is the representative of the age of Pisces, how he became the fisher of men. There's that symbolism of the fish in the story. And then how he was born the Lamb of God, and Aries, the ram, is what comes before Pisces in the procession of the equinoxes. And then before Aries is Taurus, the bull. And that's what, according to Ralph Ellis, who's my favorite to write on the Jesus dynasty leading up to him, is he basically says he's the last of the Pharaoh lineage, that he was descended from Pharaoh Amenemhet, who in the Bible is Abraham, and then instead of Jacob they have Yakuber, Pharaoh Yakuber, and then they have Akhenaten is Aaron, and his brother Tutmosis is Moses, and there's like a parallel story, because that church world and the academic world, they both have great truths, but they're in on the song sheets and they don't expose each other. And it's like the church is for the heart inclined people and college is for the brain inclined people. Well, the problem is I have both. I have a heart and a brain, and one without the other is like trying to walk with one leg. You aren't going to get very far. And that's the situation we're in. We get flattered into running into the arms of the academic world, not knowing that they're just the new priesthood. In the past, religious texts were written in archaic scriptures by men in dark robes, and nowadays it's written in scientific jargon, written by men in dark business suits. Just the names have changed, and we don't see it. And that's the kind of thing that David Icke like shocks us into seeing. Like, you think you've outgrown religion? Religion just adapted alongside, and now it flatters your intellectual vanity, and most of you just accept it as true. And that's the shocking part, is that you can't count on them for human origins. You can't count on them for medicine and vaccines. You can't count on them, to tell it to you completely on all of these important subjects in life. And it's a very different story when you start looking into these subjects for yourself, when you really want to know something and it's inspiring you to do your own digging. It's going to take you directions that are going to be surprising, that are going to be controversial.
You definitely have to keep an open mind, and you definitely, here's the thing is I can't stress this enough. And I talked about it, and it's one of the biggest things for people to overcome. But, dude, you're really never going to be able to really deep research and really take things in and go deep and have an open mind. But you have to unlearn. You have to unschool yourself. You have to unlearn. Because how we're brought up and how we're shaped and we're molded and the things we're led to believe, it's all a mind fuck, and it's been a mind fuck, and it's designed a certain way to keep you a certain way, and it's like it's like the whole Matrix thing. People they'll die to defend it, but they don't. They're defending the lie. They don't know. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not telling anybody what you know was bullshit, but like ultimately it really is, And
Yeah.
I'm not saying I know what everything's right, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to go outside of what was comfortable for me and stuff like that. But here's the thing: is like you have to unlearn in order to be able to dot connect.
Yep.
Because you will do is you'll argue with everything.
Yep.
Instead of like look at it. Like, here's the thing, like to know things,
Mm-hmm.
to understand things, I had to start looking at the other side. I had to start looking at the alternative. That's the only way I'm ever going to learn and know. And then one of the things was, I was like, this is where all I'm going to look at. Because I already know what the other side is. I already know what the Main Street side is. I spent my whole life there.
And the other side too, the strange plot twist is you end up having like a third option, and it ends up being like
you can pick and choose what's best for you.
Yeah, if you don't want Coke or Pepsi, you could get RC Cola or something.
I'm getting sarsaparilla. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
there
I'm
you
gonna go get a shot of whiskey.
So when I started questioning like the Darwinist paradigm, it's not like I became a young earth creationist, from the biblical gospel or, the church world. No, I got something different in the middle, and that's kind of like, I don't know. I'm not too into politics that much, but like the Republican and Democrat dichotomy, libertarian is neither of them, or say atheism versus theism, the belief in God or the non-belief in a God. In my readings, I stumbled upon a concept of monism, which is like monotheism but without the theism, and it's just kind of a outlook of interconnectedness and causality, trying to look at the big picture, and that I think causality itself is God, cause and effect, not necessarily. I think of it more as like the director's chair in a movie, but with no director in it. It doesn't have a personality. It just is. That's like neither of the two. You find option C. You find door C oftentimes when you start looking into the other side and you see what pans out. I mean, if you superimpose the Bible over collegiate history, certain things are going to pan out, and that's their worst nightmare. They want you fragmented and they want you polarized. They don't really care which side you choose as long as it's one or the other, and never anything in between, never anything outside of those two options.
Nothing that can connect the two to show that they both might work.
Yeah.
Or they both
They're both
work
incomplete.
together.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And we were talking about this before, and that actually brings into a good thing. Even with and this even works with as far as with the reptilians aspect side of this stuff. In the symbolism, because we see the snake, we see the reptile, we see the reptile eye, we see all this stuff all throughout in like the Caduceus of Hermes, right? We see all this, the reptilian, the Alfa Romeo that has the snake from the, you know what I mean, for the black nobility. So we have the serpent, we have it going all over, all throughout these, these different cultures. I forgot where I was going with this, dude. Oh yeah, here. Then we get into the work of Acharya S. And she is a very accomplished, was archaeologist, or she's a doctor. She has a doctorate.
I don't know. You're the one that read her, and we just talked about.
Yeah, I can't remember her credentials. Okay, I can't remember I'm not gonna just rattle off and be like she's a doctor. But she's like a highly credited like archaeologist, doctors, in her respective field. She has a doctor, whatever. She was one of the people that they used in, I can't remember one of those movies. I want to say Loose Change, something about that, where they or one of those. What was another one of those famous movies that got everybody all
Cymatica or something like that.
No, she was in it where they used her work. It was like her and Jordan Maxwell's work.
Oh, Zeitgeist,
yeah. So like they use her work, but her like the whole Christ conspiracy and stuff, right? Her work from that, where she broke it down about the sun moving across the horizon, all that stuff. And Jordan Maxwell, that's a lot of his body work. But she makes this, her big thing is connecting religion and science in history and throughout history and into modern times, but connecting them with mythology. And when you look at her body of work, or you look at these connections, that's the three that it really makes sense. When you get into these, when you start looking into alternative history, you start looking into religion, you start looking, and you're somebody that obviously, I hate to say to believe in science, because you can't say you don't believe in science, as far as but
it's more like if you're loyal to the scientific method.
Yeah. Okay, I know what you mean. Like, so I'm in both, right?
Yeah.
I am in. I don't want to say loyal, but yeah, I'm into the scientific method. You know what I mean?
You value the
we wouldn't
scientific
have wouldn't have the world we have. You know what I mean? So whatever, what have you. But she takes the religion and the science and shows where they're connected through history and through these mythologies together. And so when you start looking at, like, when you get really deep into, and this is what's crazy, if you just follow bloodlines and the symbology from it, then you start getting into reptilians. Then you start getting into this crazy, like, you get into these blood sacrifices, you get all this stuff that, like, back into the vibrational code and stuff like that. But her work, she connects those two, and you're like, holy fuck. And one of the things, about mythology, and we get into genetic, alien visitation and genetic manipulation. I like to reference that, Michael Tessarian, where these guys that come down, they start doing these things, they start making these creatures to work. So that's where we start seeing these creatures, the human body with the bird head, or the cat and the body, the pharaoh, all this different stuff. And you're like, oh yeah, no, they just worship these things. This is the worship for the birds. Like, no, there was like a world. There was like a Conan world. Yeah. And that was the primitive world from these people, from the shattering of like the fall of what was
left. Remember the enemy tribe,
Atlantis,
with James Earl Jones in Conan? He had the snake symbolism like all around him, like the cave and stuff. And yeah, these are ancient, themes.
Well, that's what these stories, they all come from the pre-Diluvian, the antediluvian world. This
is my personal viewpoint on that is, one,
I'm not even a geek about this shit, and I know about this stuff.
humans have been here a
Fucking
lot
retarded.
longer than 150 to 200,000 years. Homo sapiens sapiens. How they say we evolved, from like a chimp gradually walking upright into us. I'm being a little bit vague in that, but
Yeah.
that's one of the most powerful religious symbols in the world. None of us could have graduated high school without it. But imagine being an archaeologist and you're digging further in the geologic column than humans should be. You're more in like the dinosaur layers, and you find a human skeleton, a fully modern human skeleton that's further down than the supposed pre-humans. You know what I mean? An out of place human that pulls the rug out from all that whole story, that whole timeline narrative, and that's something that like I want to distinguish is like when you challenge the narrative, you're not necessarily challenging the process of adaptation or evolution or extinction. You're not challenging science. You're challenging the historical narrative of it. And if humans go back way far, where did we come from? And I think we came from these, where the reptilians came from in a sense, from another frequency. That's where humanity came from in the first place. And then later, alien influences started coming here. Well, same way.
Well, here we have this motif. We have this reptilian people motif that you see all throughout history. You see the Hopi Indians. You see the Zulus with the Chitahuri. You see the Aborigines of Australia. The Aztecs and the Maya. Down in South America and all stuff, the Peruvians, right? Okay, you go all across the whole fucking planet. You go the whole place, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, right? But you go all throughout history, and you see these common themes from these different, these different entities, or these different things. But they're all connected. All the stories are very similar. The gods, the evolution, the perspective of things. I had some place where I was actually going. I was going to make a fucking point with this.
To me, the image of human origins look more like Superman plus Bigfoot equals humans. And then that Superman went back to the drawing board and created a leader class of reptilian hybrids.
Well,
so there's different stages, but isn't Superman a human, even though he's Superman? And that's where it gets tough. Like, how do you define human? And from my perspective, it's the shape itself anatomically that makes you a human. So even like an alien would be like a humanoid figure to me, or even Bigfoot would be a human, or even a reptilian. We're still all...
my son Enoch coming in, he's a little alien.
That's the strange part about alien encounter stories, is that they all take that same general shape. Like a gray alien is still bipedal with a head on two shoulders. And why would they all take that same general shape? Why wouldn't it be a completely different body form? And so throughout the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah, right. Is that why is that bipedal mode? Like, why is this, because you see that in these entities, and you see that, and people say they see that in like spirits and aspirations, as far as like outside of the human form, like in these reptilians, and also here you have, like, you get with Baphomet, it's still got two hooves. Right, but here's something though. But in all these histories and stuff like that, right, you get into these ground-dwelling lizards and stuff like that, and then you start seeing this in the lore and the stories and stuff, and people still don't make these connections. And one of the best ones though, where it really ties in to me, that really brings, I think whoever put this together, I think this is a time where there was a lot of truth going out, in disguise of like entertainment.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was a lack. Maybe it was so much a lack of real creativity. So they would take something that was, in like a history book or something like that, and then made it a little bit more fictional and brought it to TV. But
yeah,
the
they
show
told a great story in the form of entertainment.
Yeah, well, that's
Yep,
what
yep.
Conan is. That's all
Yeah,
that type
yeah.
stuff like that. Like it's a pre-Diluvian, but the show, Land of the Lost. Now that's all about these people who go back in time. This interdimensional kind of this they went through this little time warp, right, in this loophole. But they were where they were, but it took them back, and now there's dinosaurs, and now they have these partially these hominoid people right here. They have these hominoid people here. I forget their name, but they had like Chaka. Have you ever seen the show Land of the Lost?
I saw it like a handful of times a long time ago. That's something I should revisit, post Awakening.
But here's one of the things. They had what was called the Slee Stacks. And the Slee Stacks were these alien lizard people that were trapped here. And during this dinosaur time, and they just learned but they lived in these tunnels underneath the ground. But they had these big eyes, and they had these jewels, and they communicated through crystals, and they were able to. There's all the stuff that they talked about in these ancient times.
Yep.
And so it's crazy as a kid, I watch these shows, and I'm a little guy. I'm like maybe even younger than Eno. I'm like 5, I'm around 5'6". I'm around his age, maybe a little bit younger. But I remember the stuff. So then when I'm watching and I'm learning and I'm going down this research, and I'm like, they've been telling us this. This has been shown to us before. And that's just one. There's dozens of examples in shows, in movies, and history,
I read that book by, oh man, I forget, but it's called The Ancient, The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, and it talks about the reptilian bloodlines and the mythology, and why it kind of explains why we see it in the.
I have like Astrology by Manly P. Hall, and I don't
Dude,
think
he's
I've ever read
super
it.
Smart, dude. Like, this book's like 100 years old almost.
I've listened to some of his lectures, but he was a 33-degree Mason.
After this book came out, he got made an honorary 33rd degree Mason, and he never talked about it anymore because he'd taken the oath, basically. But
Wait, never talked about what?
Freemasonry.
But-
Because once he joins the secret society, you can't start talking about the teachings and the secrets that they have once you're on the team, kind of. But that book that he wrote leading up to his honorary acceptance, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, it kind of redefined how I look at the word philosophy. On paper, that means the love of knowledge. But after reading that book, I started to look at it like a secret trade or a secret society that you are apprenticed into, and that
For philosophy or for
no, that's their name. The philosophers, they're beyond the Illuminati. They are the true lovers of knowledge, and they are the ultimate secret society, and through time have put out entertainment and writing. But it wasn't even them. It was like the royal classes and the economic elite, the human levels of it, trying to mimic what they learned, because they knew these philosophers were so smart, but they weren't let in on the knowledge. They were kept in the outer court of the mystery schools. That's what they refer to it as, that the general public is misled, not by the philosophers themselves, but by their elite class that are jealous of the philosophers. So that's why their teachings trickle down into our education, trickle down into our holy books, trickle down into our entertainment.
Well, it's not so much. I don't want to so much as the teachings as it is that comes down through, but it's like it's the information that like comes down that helps shape and control the paradigm, the world you see. You know what I mean? Because like
Yes,
the world we have right now, it has been shaped and formed to be this way. They did, like, these secret societies, they didn't form within it. They formed it. When they came together, they started shaping things. You know what I mean? They started working. I mean, that's how. That's like the world we're in is been crafted this way by those who seek to continue to control it.
Yep.
You know,
And that's how it works. So what we're accessed here is like the table scraps of the knowledge, you know, in if you're in the working class and went to public school, and you know, unless you had somebody that's really gonna inspire you to do your own digging, there's very little crossover from like the intellectual, you know, the scientific, quote unquote, people, you know, the people that want to genuinely know. They never hear any better. And it's not your fault if you don't know something that's never crossed your path. But that's what a lot of us, we don't have access to the fine dining knowledge. You know, we get the table scraps. It's a
no, 100%. Well, that's the thing is like, you know, it's funny is and I'm not saying that some wasn't. I'm not saying some wasn't destroyed and all that stuff. But it's like when they talked about the Catholic Church would go in and destroy everything. I was like, no, they didn't. They stole. They sought out what they needed, the most important shit. They burned the rest of it to get rid of the history. But they took the vital information that's a part of the fucking control network. I go, why do you think the Vatican has that fucking vault no one can get into? That's fucking guarded like nothing else. This ain't no fucking shit. This ain't no shit from the movie. The fucking Code or whatever the fuck.
Oh, Da Vinci Code.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like that's real. That the fucking vault at the Vatican, and that's some real shit.
Yeah,
I go. You want to know where those the Maya calendars are? Boom, there. You want to know what happened to the fucking? Do you know to these
their
ancient
scrolls and shit?
Yeah, you want to know what happened to ancient fucking Samaria? You want to know what happened to ancient Egypt? They're in that motherfucker.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because now you start getting into these royal bloodlines. You start getting into this whole shit with the, again, the reptilians and all that stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
You get into you get into the Vatican. You get into you have the city states. You know, you have the Vatican, you have D.C., and you have
London, the Crown in London.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And that's what's ruling the world, you know. It's kind of funny, man, and there's like a crazy thing, and here's a wild connection into all this stuff. And again, about the reptilians, you watch the movie Fear and Loathing.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
He's having acid trips and right, and he's going all this stuff, and he's seeing these people. He's seeing everybody as these reptiles. He's seeing these people, and then during these acid trips, you think he's just hearing this weird shit, but he overhears a phone conversation where this guy's like, yeah, they chopped the girl's head off, and they you know, they da-da-da-da. And he goes, but then he goes, then they're talking about, he goes, I think they're going after the pineal gland, right?
Yeah, he's on the payphone. Yeah, I remember that.
In the beginning, and so when you're first seeing it, and when you don't know, you're like, oh wow, that's just the crazy shit you hear on fucking acid, dude, you know. And then you get into the later in the movie, and then they're taking the adrenochrome. He's like, dude, there's only one way you can get this is from a human body.
Yeah,
and they don't get into
my
it.
Satanist friend, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. But they don't get into the whole they don't get into the trauma and all the stuff that's done with that. You know what I mean? But they talk about it in that movie, right? And then you go and you look at history and you look at all this shit and you look at these bloodlines, you look at these people, you look at these Satanists and shit like that, these people that do this stuff. That's exactly what they're doing. They're fucking going after these. They're going after these people, or they're torturing kids or drinking their blood because the adrenalized blood, and that's the adrenochrome and all stuff like that, right? Well. Right, Hunter S. Thompson was talking about the acid, the whole thing with the acid is to show, so he can show the reptilians and stuff like that. But dude, people say, you know, he committed suicide. I don't think he committed suicide, to be honest with you. I think he was killed because he was actually known to make these snuff films. He was actually made snuff films for like rich elite. Was the you know, and then he started writing about it and he started getting a little loosey goosey when that movie came out. They weren't too happy about it. I think he was fucking killed, to be honest with you.
My friend read like most of his books, and he didn't believe that he committed suicide. And I think he mentioned that he even wrote about, if I'm found suicided, you'll know what happened. I mean, I don't know Hunter S. Thompson's work that well, but my friend said that in one of his last books, he even predicted his own death.
Well, dude, we'll get this. In the movie, he fucking talks about, and I don't remember so much. I'd have to go through. I mean, I know the movie almost verbatim. I don't think he mentions anything about the British Crown. He might, but he talks about, money and the money with loans being tied in with or from the World Bank, which is owned by the Vatican. So in this movie, he's talking about this. He's talking about this. Has this. There's a symbology of the reptilians, the blood sacrifice of kids, going into this whole vibrational thing, and then the Vatican, right, which is kind of tied into all this stuff. And the Vatican is actually tied in with the British Crown with all this when it comes to their history and all that stuff. But when it comes to the secret societies that they're all both like woven in and out of and stuff, that goes back into these blood sacrifices, and it's all been right there. Oh, and this is what I was getting at. It's all been shown to us all throughout, like, the history of things, because we have the knights fighting the dragons, the reptilians, right? We have, but look at how things go up in this vibrational thing into the world, okay? And they show us this, and it's kind of like the way things are now, but people just want to deny it. They want to look at it as like, oh, that's this fairy tale. And I'm just going to start. Well, here's the bottom. You have the people, right? You have the masses, right? And then you get up and you have the rich, and within that, they have the people that were not the serfs, but the landlords, right? And the landlords are still
the manager class.
Yeah, the manager class. Then you have the people that, more of the landowners, but everybody's still. It goes up to the royalty. It goes up to the king. So then you get to like the kings. Right, then you get to the royals, right, and then from the royals, who do the royals look to? The royals look to they have the priest in their ear, right, but then them and the royals and the priests, they look to like the shaman or the witch doctor, right? They look into the wizard or the witch, and then that goes into the dark arts of things, right? And so now you start getting into when they're and they show us all this time. Now then we get into the bloodlining and get stuff, and you see this throughout history through the royals, they're all out.
They're the biggest obsessors of
staying
things.
young.
That they're also the biggest obsessors of things like astrology, and these huge corporations. They have some of the world's most expensive astrologers on their payroll. To us, we think it's a joke.
Yeah, 100%.
To them, they understand that it's a high science and it's a timeless way of associating this royal family throughout the ages.
That's why we're led to believe it's stupid and you're an idiot and you're a moron.
Stupidity is a great alibi.
But that's why that's why people. But like you said, you have these top major companies. You have these major politicians. You have these historical figure people. They've made these decisions from numerology and astrological signs and like astrology based decisions on millions of lives, millions of dollars. You know what I'm saying? They've done this all throughout history, but we're told, oh, that's stupid. If you knew,
that's what that Manly P. Hall book was saying,
that's a ThinkStopper thing. People need to stop and think. That what we're told is bullshit. Something
you could see, like an impossible painting with like God with three faces, from the Renaissance era or older. Manly P. Hall is saying that it's supposed to not make sense, but for the initiate that knows how to see and decode what's being said, it's saying that this entity has a presence beyond our sight. It has a face above us, the face here in this world, and then another face below. Or when you see like Shiva with 6 arms, of course, we've never seen anything like that in, our fossil record, or if you have, you were lucky, like that 6 arms thing. They didn't literally mean a deity with 6 arms. They meant a deity with a pair of hands above us, a pair of hands here, and a pair of hands below us, where we exist in this 5 sense reality, as far as most of us know, where we're talking about a life form that has a lot wider
in the 369.
Exactly.
Outside of the physical frequencies.
And that's the overall like consideration that changes your worldview. It changes how you see aliens, like where they come from and how you would understand an alien to be, or our human origins, that we came from this higher dimension in the first place. Like we jumped radio stations. That's why we have extreme antiquity going back in the millions of years in the fossil record, even though that evidence is so suppressed, people think it's non-existent. And that's another part of what David Icke did. He's just a journalist. I mean, he's a very good journalist, but he's an independently owned and operated researcher. And he went and read a grip of books and sought out all this knowledge that never makes it to the mainstream. It doesn't make it in academia, but it's still there.
There's got to be now. I honestly have to believe. It real quick, David Icke, in when you're saying he's a journalist, because he just says, he goes, dude, I'm not. This is all stuff that's like presented to me. But when he had like his awakening, he had like this, he had that moment. He was like, everything that I'm expressing, I'm showing you, was given to me. It was pointed out to me. I found it. It found me. He goes, I just didn't just start reading and know where to look. You know what I mean? It was like there was a guiding hand. There's like an energy. There's like something that was like, that helped me sort through. Oh, I don't need to read this whole volume. This is what. This is the key information.
This is what I'm looking for.
This is what unlocks the next thing. And he's like,
there you go.
He's like, everything. He goes, everything that I was like. He goes, I just didn't start it because one thing led to another. And he goes, and it wasn't just me. It was other people. It was other things in this connectedness, And he goes, the more I just accepted it, the more it started happening. It started rapidly coming together. And he goes, the more the voice told me, this is where you need to go. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to write down. It's almost like an Abraham thing, Abraham Hicks,
Yeah, you could
or
say
Edgar Casey or some shit,
Yeah, Esther Hicks she presents herself as a contactee or a medium for this extra dimensional being named Abraham. And you're right, David Icke is similar in the sense that he's like, yeah, I've been contacted, I was shown where to look, he had guidance. And
and the thing is people think it's bullshit, but he's still cranking out new information that's connecting everything more.
And the time came out that his accuracy, stood the test of time, and a lot of confirmation came out after the fact. And
a lot of the quantum physics stuff that he talked about.
Yeah.
And then now mainstream science is coming around, and people are like, oh yeah, and and that goes with the old adage, first they mock you, then they deny you, or first they deny you, then they mock you, or first something, then
first they laugh, then they fight you, then they join you.
Yeah,
something like that.
And that's what's like going on with him, and it's an amazing thing. The guy has been accurate. It doesn't have to be time, and he's never made like a prediction. He's just been pointing out what's there. He's like,
this is the way the wind's blowing. It's not that he's psychic; it's that he understands the direction things are going, and he's probably my favorite writer. I've learned a lot from him, and he changed, the Darwinist timeline of human origins. That matters to a lot of people. It's one thing to just talk about it, but people really believe it in their heart and soul, and they think mankind evolved from bipedal apes with no intervention, whether...
Well, here's the thing about that, dude, and this has been proven, that there is no species change.
Right, there's
nothing,
that too. Like
nothing's gone from like fish to let's take the flying fish. Nothing's gone fully from fish to bird, but there's an adaptation in there's nothing has gone through an evolution that has changed from one species to the next, but there's been an adaptation through evolution within that species to develop certain characteristics, and that's all out of the thing to survive. Now, here's the thing: why in the history really would something evolve into us to survive naked in this world? when we need fucking the most shelter out of any fucking thing in this world.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
We're as least adapted as it gets in the natural
dude.
world. Yeah.
I mean, as far as our naked bodies,
Right.
We have the intelligence and we adapt to where we build walls.
and
We're able to build this stuff, but
there's other species in
we had to evolve into this.
There's other species out there that are kind of like, okay, where did that really come from? Like the cheetah, you know, it's like a half dog, half cat. It's different than both. It gives diseases only both get, and it has dog style paws, and it's kind of got like a greyhound body, but a cat's head on it. You know, you could look into certain species that kind of don't make sense, but humanity makes the least sense out of all the biology. That's the crazy, like, slap in the face. Like, well, that Darwinist timeline, that Darwinist view, and it's not even Charles's fault. Because in the 1800s, when Charles
didn't even believe his own shit ultimately.
He was at least honest about. He's like, the fossil record doesn't go this way, but I suspect that one day it will. So he was fair, and he had a deathbed repentance, right, or some like towards the end of his life. But natural selection, like you're saying, that is real. You know, like you could be a dog breeder or breed marijuana or something, and there's different characteristics for different species.
No, 100%, yeah.
You could.
It's eugenics.
Well, there you go. But you could get the traits that you want, where that's not writing new traits. It's not generating new DNA code. It's a weeding out of pre-existing traits. You're working your way down, not up. And that's the difference between natural selection and species to species macroevolution, is they're talking about a lizard giving birth to a rat eventually, right? Reptiles giving birth to mammals. Eventually down the line, something had to be a reptile and give birth to a mammal. Where are those? Because we've never witnessed in the real world.
Well, you want to know what's funny? Yeah, we haven't. Go ahead and finish. Yeah,
we've never witnessed in the natural world something giving birth to a progeny that wasn't the same species as the parents. You know, rats give birth to rats. Dogs give birth to dogs. Like, yeah, the traits could change, you know, but you're not introducing new DNA. You're not creating a new species. You're weeding out existing species or existing traits. You're working your way down. It's like extinction based. It's not a new
into a sense, but in some cases you have this adaptation. Like you have the Galapagos Islands where you have like those lizards that swim down in the water. They can hold their breath for so long, so that's how but the thing is like they've developed that over so many years of that's where their food source is. That's how they're surviving. It's like the flying fish jumping out of the water and covering long distance. That's how they were able to stay alive from being completely eaten.
And
you know what I mean?
True.
Like they've developed. But what I'm getting at is is 100% in agreement with you. Nothing's given birth without any kind of manipulation. Nothing's given birth to a different species. You'll get a hybrid. You can get hybrids. That's where like the jet. That's where like the mule or the donkey or whatever. One of those two comes from.
Things go extinct. Things die off, and other things get allowed to live on.
Yes.
That whole level of it is right. Natural selection, as things getting killed off by the environment for more favorable traits. That level of it is accurate. But
if you hold it down here, it'll keep it there. Right at the bottom, so you can just there you go. Just keep it right up in the old chopper. There you go.
That's an exaggeration of saying everything came from each other. That this is Michael Cremo territory, or anybody that's read him.
I'm not familiar with his works.
He's one of those guys that writes about human origins and the extreme antiquity of human origins. He's saying that's how it works. That is kind of Darwinism upside down. Like we don't get. He's saying that we appeared from another range in electromagnetism, and that we're copies off of that original visitation or that original migration to this place, and that's why we progressively get more and more diseases, because it's like you're Xeroxing a Xerox, that every time you make a copy on this photocopier machine, the resolution is less clear. And that's why our bodies are that's why we're not living as long as we used to. And I mean, according to him, but he means like not in the past, like 20 or 30
Not in this
years, but
modern-
like, in the long, big picture of it, that we are going downhill, that we're getting
there's-
worse.
There was, I've been looking. There's some stuff I've been kind of researching recently, and there's when you get into, I've been really into. We were talking about this whole vibration, manifesting, changing your reality and stuff like that. The power of like positivity and stuff. When you learn about this stuff, you learn that like back in the 30s, like the 20s and 30s, when they like these went on these crazy explorations, expeditions, and they found like these people that lived up in the mountains in Nepal and stuff, and they're like supposedly like the elders and their people were living to like 120, 150, and not representing at all that age, but they were like the in these documents and these lectures that I've watched and stuff like that, in a couple things that I've read, excerpts and stuff. It's coming in on both lines. This is what these people are out there. They're working every day. They're tilling the fields. They're actually drinking. They're drinking alcohol and they're smoking cigarettes and stuff like that. And they're like, what's the case? And they're like, well, this is their daily their mantra. This is their vibrational code. This is how they're living. This is whatever, this is their vibe. And they're like, they're more in tune with the earth.
Yep.
And then if you look at us, so I can see what he's saying as far as like, I can see what you're saying as far as they're out of, we're not living as long when you look at like, because it's funny, it's like you'll read like these histories, all these guys were, a couple hundred years old or something like that, and you're like, oh, that's nothing. Then people say, oh no, they counted the years different or all stuff like that, and it was like, well, maybe there was a time, dude, where we were more in tune with Earth. There wasn't that pollution, you know what I mean? To where we lived in certain places where we weren't wiped out by the environment, and people could fucking live that long. I mean, Tesla, and I believe one of the things he went wrong with, honestly, was Tesla believed that he could live to be 150 years old by drinking whiskey every day and stuff, but not like getting drunk, but having whiskey to keep the blood. He said it
microdosing.
Yeah, kind of, right. He said drinking whiskey would like keep his blood thin and flowing, or keep it so it wouldn't in his older age, and make it easier for the heart to pump, and he had this all mapped out. But he was like a vegan, and one of the things that people, you can argue either way, but one of the things is like, and I know people are vegetarian, some are vegan, some are not. It's not for everybody, and I think that rapidly aged him. People are, how could that be, dude? Your brain needs to run on fat, and it's animal fat. I'm sorry, but it does. Your brain needs. You can get coconut oil, you get avocados, but like you're giving your brain bacon fat, duck fat. You're giving your brain fucking butter. People are like, oh, it clogs your arteries. No, it doesn't. It's when you reduce that stuff, because that stuff moves all that shit through. Science is found. Has found this. It's sugars that fuck you off. You know what I mean?
And what you're talking about.
But I think he fucked himself off towards the end, because he was like vegan at that point.
Getting back, Tesla died in the early 40s, and you're talking about that, meeting the mountain people of Tibet and stuff like that. Today, the word spiritualism is, in the minds of most people, defined as belief in a higher power. But again, going back to Michael Cremo and what he was talking about, he points out like the political landscape of the 1800s when Darwin showed up on the scene, and the rival like candidate of what could take over academia at the time was spiritualism, but not like how we define it today in the belief of a higher power. like how we were talking about earlier, an energetic viewpoint of the world. And these were people doing seances and manifestation. This is when hypnotherapy came out. There was a guy named Mesmer, and that's what mesmerism is from. You know, like these were all historical figures. And like Tesla and Edison went to war, you know, the war of the currents between AC and DC.
Yep.
Darwinism.
Sorry. I mean to pop the mic there, but yep.
Darwinism went through a similar thing against spiritualism.
Oh yeah.
And those were the two systems that head off, and we never even hear of spiritualism in that way today.
They had to make movies back in those days to sway public opinion away from spiritualism.
And Darwinism won in the court of public opinion, but didn't win scientifically.
Well,
That's
it won in the
strange
court of
plot
public
twist.
opinion because there was the propaganda, because that was the push for the elites to one. That was a push for them to separate themselves, right? Their higher bloodline. That's where they start getting into eugenics.
Yeah.
Really start pushing because who the fuck he was relative of two people. Wasn't he? I forget. Fuck, man. Darwin's is relative to like two people that really pushed that agenda on separate issues, and I can't remember who. My brain's kind of turned into mush as far as this.
Well,
world
there's
is
a guy,
concerned.
one of the main scientists of the spiritualist persuasion.
I want to say it's like I want to say it's but it's like Sigmund Freud and like one of the propagandists in the world, and they're both like working for the elite. But
You're probably onto something.
I could be wrong, but they're all tied in, and they used his work to push the eugenics issue. And
That sounds about right. And Charles realized what they did to him. They turned him into a mascot, and it became this academic, institution. And it has not. Darwinism has nothing to do with the man named Charles. You know, they did the same thing to Einstein. They've done it before. You know, where they'll make you so famous. You know, like a disgruntled celebrity that hates what they've been sold into. You know, like
why it's like they use Darwin, right? They use this, right? And they use Edison, right? And they use what I mean to like push us up, but like
poster boys. Yeah.
yeah. How come like when the real world has been shaped by like Tesla? You know what I mean? Like everything we have is like based off of this dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and we don't hear him about any of the history books until now. You know, the
Those
power of the
guys-
internet.
Those guys that don't serve the beast, you know, the beast has no interest in them, so they'll do what they can to erase you from history, you know. And
Well, see, you know what's funny too is I find the times from like the 1860s. I mean, really the whole fucking scope of things, but like, and I say the 1860s because like, there's a gentleman by the name of Ignatius Donnelly, the guy who I named my son after. He was, he was in the pursuit of Atlantis and all stuff, but he wrote all these books about how Sir Francis Bacon was Shakespeare and how he wrote the King James version of the Bible and and all stuff. And people was like, that's crazy, but that was like the conspiracy at the time. And then there's like a lot of evidence that supports that. They still argue it, but his work, certain circles still argue it, but his work is, documented. But the thing is like everything that he did, that guy Ignatius Donnelly, was completely on a different level and way ahead of its time, right? Now, the reason why I talk about these are fascinating times because all around the world you have this pursuit. All these people are in a pursuit for a higher power, a higher cause, a higher meaning, of things and stuff like that. This different energy, and you get into like the Nazis, right? You get into like these people of power, pre-Nazi. You get on all these different stuff, and they're all trying to fucking have this contact with like aliens and interdimensional beings, and they're doing whatever they can to like raise. But the thing is they got into some serious shit. They got into some serious stuff, and all this stuff just gets like cast aside, shrouded in obscurity. It's kept away from us.
The 1800s really are a very important century, and I kept getting brought back over and over again, from Nikola Tesla versus Edison, or Charles Darwin, or the Civil War, in the 1860s.
Yeah, then you have guys like in those times like Buckminster Fuller, that are shattering the fucking paradigm with these.
So many great thinkers happened in the 1800s. That century,
early 1800s, yeah, dude.
it really was. Or say gasoline versus diesel. Like all of these things happened. The direction that we're on now started or was shaped in the 1800s in many ways. It's like a new renaissance right there, the Industrial Revolution. And that really blew me away. And,
architecture and construction
right,
and
all
just
these
amazing,
trades, our technical
amazing things.
Our tooling ability, didn't get
machinists.
modern, right, until the 1800s. And see, that's what we've been talking about earlier. The human narrative, David Icke helped me rethink that, where I don't think we were primitive cavemen that didn't know very much and evolved to the technological tip of the spear like we are now. I think we were advanced and destroyed, and we've been getting re-advanced. So our outlook on the ancient world as primitive backwards people is wrong. They're descended from refugees. And they had great knowledge, and how that's your worldview, that matters. Like how you look at the ancient world. If you look at them if you look down on them technologically, that's one thing. But if you look at them that they're so bright, it's blinding, that's a completely different story. And so when Flat Earth crossed my path, I had already had a favoritism for the ancient world as being advanced that a lot of people don't have.
True.
And
a respect for that.
Exactly. I had an outlook on them being technologically advanced and us playing catch up. And there was a moment where,
dude, I'm using that, bro. That's fucking, I think we're playing fucking catch up, dude.
There was a
Honestly.
moment where what was it, like spring?
And we're living in amazing times.
Yeah.
I
think it was like spring of 2015 when certain, in the conspiracy type researchers on social media and stuff, Flat Earth started making its rounds. And you remember when it happened, we were friends at the time, and a lot of people, there was a moment, a lot of people laughed it off, and I laughed it off first, but I was one of the people that I knew that embraced it and got into it, because there was a moment where I was reminded.
Well, I certainly didn't. I certainly didn't treat it like how a lot of people I know do, where they just fucking fly off the handle and just.
I know it's still very heated, even though that.
Oh, I know. Yeah, but people have like a fucking like a Tourette's. Fucking. No, I don't even. That's not even, because that's impulsive. These people just have this vehemence, like.
Yeah, it's bad, man.
It's
really
crazy.
Bad. Where there's
just to have a discussion about it,
right? And since it's going that way, I'm just gonna share what it means to me. I'm not asking anybody else to think like me out there, But to recap my story on what I went through, I was already a non-believer in the Darwinist timeline of human origins, and I looked at our ancestors as being advanced. And there was a moment where I was reminded that the most famous and unanimous stance of the ancient world was that they thought it was flat. Whereas, like, how do you reconcile that when you have this favoritism for the ancient world as being modern, yet flat earthers at the same time? Where that gave me room to at least look into the evidence, where a lot of people didn't have that room because they have this worldview of how humanity showed up and how we're the tip of the spear, and their worldview of astronomy and all this stuff that came in the 1500s, the 1800s challenged a lot of that, because that's when our tooling got sophisticated enough to really measure like a gravitational field if we're making a skyscraper, or if we're moving super heavy.
Yeah, Ignatius
trains.
Donnelly wanted to use already like sonar technology to try and find the sunken city of Atlantis.
Yeah,
you know
man.
what I mean?
See, like the 1800s were, like you were saying, they were ahead of their time. Like, yeah, we didn't have cable TV.
Well,
but,
dude, back then too, man. Like they didn't have. See, people don't understand. People think that our educational system that we have today was how it was. No, your educational system back then, dude, was like if they had anything, that's why you'd hear like these guys. Oh, he only had a 4th grade education. Well, because you know what they learned in that span of time. They were learning Latin. They were learning, they were learning all sorts of different stuff that we definitely don't learn today. But one of the things that they were learning, they learned the trivium and quadrivium. They learned grammar, logic, and rhetoric. They learned the science. They learned how to learn. You know what I mean? They learned it they learned how to question and take things at face value. They learned, you know what I mean? And that was the things that was like taught, and rest in peace, John Taylor Gatto, the guy that, that was my journey into unschooling. Oh, geez, that's my little daughter screaming. Holy cow, scared me. I thought there was got bit by a spider or something. Screaming. Anyways, he was the one that was really into the whole unschooling, and if you look up his body of work, you cannot deny. But the thing is there was those single room schoolhouse where grades, what we would say 1 through 12, they were all in. The older kids were still in there, and they would teach the other. And education was at a far higher and accelerated rate, and that led to where it was heavily pushed was your creativity and your imagination and stuff. Well, then we start entering into when we get into the Industrial Revolution, we start getting into factory work, we start getting into stuff. These elite people, they're like, we don't want a nation of thinkers, we want a nation of workers, right? So they start adopting the Prussian school system, and they're like Edison and Carnegie and Rockefeller, and they use the work of Horace Mann and all these people, and there's so many other names in there. Woodrow Wilson is quoted as saying, for our doctors, our politicians, and our ruling elite, we have a certain education that's already taken care of by that. We need another education system for our working class. And basically what he was saying is like, no, we're good, but we need you to run this shit for us. You need to, basically you need to be
the labor part.
Yeah, exactly. And so the education there was you're only going to go so far. It's only going to go so much. Yeah. Here's an example that John Taylor Gatto broke down as far as the information. This is what people don't know, because the only thing we only one way. Everything was just been one way. The schools like Montessori and all stuff, they use these other means of education, your touch, feel, your sense, your doing and stuff like that, right? Well, they start taking that out. They start taking out the creativity. They start doing all this stuff. But you're just designed. Your education is just smart enough to not challenge the system, just to work the machines, to do da 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 da. But the perfect example of this is, right, in our education that we grew up, you're not allowed to look at the other person's. You can't talk during the test. You got to do this. Well, in higher educations, you know what you do during test time? You resource. You use other people's work, what they know, and this, that, and the other thing. Well, what do you learn to do when you're? What do you learn to do if you're running a business? If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to learn to resource. You got to learn to network. You got to learn to do all this stuff like that. But in our mindset, we just want to find a job, dude. How many times you hear so many people, I just need to find a good job, man, instead of create something and do something, dude. They've separated us from that.
No, you're right. And we're not professional, so much anymore, where we used to have trades and be tradesmen, going back to the times.
Now we are, though. Luckily, Generation Z, I'm looking at these kids. They're looking at trade schools. They're not getting into colleges.
Well, maybe that's
anymore.
Coming back around, but I mean,
let's bring the apprenticeship back.
When we were young adults, most of the degree holders that we knew didn't have jobs related to that degree.
Oh, not at all.
Bro,
you know how many? Okay, when I turned 21, I was juiced in. That's the way you get a gig. I was juiced in. I got a killer fucking bar back job. It's a great education, and a real look into the real world. Monte Carlo on the Strip, 21, bam, making like fucking 50, 60K a year. You know what I mean?
That's
fucking
tight.
doing fucking great, right? Right off the bat. Well, everybody I'm around, they're fucking they're like in their late 20s or at the earliest, but they're like in their 30s and 40s, you know what I mean? Like, right? So I'm a young pup. Well, all these people got college degrees, but they're bartending and they're cocktail waitressing or they're dealers and they're working with me. And I'm catching a lot of heat. You know, they're all mad, they're all bitter that I got a gig like them and I don't have no debt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, the story goes, I acquire a lot debt later on in life, but I don't have, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I know
through
what you
some
mean.
stupidity. But the thing is like the education. We were all sold. I was sold, but I knew early in life. I think I was about 9 years old. I think I remember the moment. Everybody they're talking in school about going to college and all stuff like that, and I'm like, well, I really don't want more school. You know, I really don't like it here. And then I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to college. I'm like, oh, again, I was like, I'd like to be like a psychologist. I'd like to be a psychiatrist. I'd like to listen and talk to people, and you know. And they're like, oh, well, you got to go to this math class, and you got to go to this, and I'm like, well, that has nothing to do with what I want to learn. And like, well, but you got to go through that to do that. And I was like, well, fuck it, I'm out. I'm not doing that shit. And then you find out they're like, oh, well, that's just to find the people that really want to do it. No, that's to feed you through a fucking system, to feed you through a thing. So then you're fucking trapped. Because then you went for this fucking 4-year degree. It was most likely end up being an 8-year degree. You're getting this fucking loan that you can't discharge. Now you got a fucking house. You got a mortgage with no fucking house. And then that whatever you were going into is not there anymore. That industry's not there. They sold you. Dude, the fucking college debt is in the trillions right now. I don't know the number, but I know it is double what credit card debt is. Now, that's kind of muddled because a lot of credit card debt is tied in with college debt because kids just live on those credit cards. But even with those kids living on the credit cards, college tuition debt surpasses home mortgage debt and fucking credit card debt.
That's a
and
trip,
auto
man.
loans.
That's a trip, man. I haven't heard that one, but you know,
All right.
it's believable.
How fucked is that, dude?
Sucks.
You know, and everybody, and here's the thing, man. Anybody that's listening is probably a victim of that shit, dude. Yeah. My brother-in-law is a victim of that. He went for some, like, engineering gig, and then fucking when he got the gig, 9/11 hit. Bam, he got fired from that job, and then he's just hasn't been in that industry. You know what I mean? And so then he's, like, stuck just trying to live.
I know it's
like,
up.
And with this debt, and then they're like, you know, Obama was trying to get relief for that. I think there was like a select sum that he did, which is cool. That's like one of the things I can say was good about him. I know Trump and this administration was talking about having some debt relief because, dude, they're gonna have to do something, man. You know, everybody was sold on that bullshit. Everybody's sold on that. Oh, you're gonna make $1 million more than anybody, motherfucker. There's kids who aren't even fucking 18 yet making millions of dollars playing video games on fucking YouTube and Twitch. Motherfuck you, man. Dude. We've been sold this shit when you can. The world's different. The game's different, and they didn't fucking prepare us for that shit. And those that didn't get in had a fucking better leg up than those that fucking that did. You know. Sorry, that's my rant.
No. And you know, you can't graduate in any of it. The Darwinist paradigm permeates different subjects. Like, you can't become a science teacher if you don't buy into that. You can't become a historian if you don't have that outlook of history, you know, leading up to it. Or if you want to go dig for bones and archaeologically, you have to buy into that timeline. It's a very powerful.
That's the thing that Lloyd Pye
exactly
brought up.
Yeah, I read Lloyd Pye's. I have Lloyd Pye's book. Intervention theory. I read it.
Yeah, he was like, dude, he goes, you want to know why people don't believe in Bigfoot? Is because the evidence that's been there has been brought up. It has been specifically shut down because it shatters the Darwinist fucking theory. Da, 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 da.
Yep.
That, you know, like the evolution. There's like, no, dude, there was something else here, and we're part of that.
Right.
You know? And people were like, and it's funny, as I was just getting this talk today, because I was talking to my buddy, Bigfoot, and we are talking about it and stuff, and I was like, dude, there was a time where pandas were a myth. Everybody thought pandas were bullshit, but then once they went deep enough into the forest, they're like, fuck, there's pandas.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
But
There's-
panda's not
there's-
a problem for the Darwinist paradigm.
No,
like
no, no. But
Bigfoot
what I'm
is.
saying,
no,
but what
I
I'm
know what
saying
you
is
mean, I know
like
what you mean.
going like, you know, and people are like, oh, well, we would have found it by now. Duh. I go, people have one, people have two. There's places in a lot of these forests and a lot of these jungles, or a lot of these I'm gonna say jungles and stuff, but a lot of these forests and a lot of these mountain ranges and stuff like that, where man hasn't traversed.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Where man hasn't fucking gone. And I live here in the state of Nevada, and when I was learning about a lot of the history, that is one of the things that's brought up all throughout the history of Nevada. There is still unpioneered land in Nevada, and the reason why it hasn't been is because they're like, yeah, that's just more mountains and shit. There's no reason to hike up over there. We know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've flown over it, we've seen it. Like, there's no reason to go in there. And people
just
haven't
imagine
gone.
how hard it would have been to travel from Vegas to San Diego, like in the cowboy days. You know, like, yeah, you're on horses and you think you have a map to where you could get water and stuff, but that shit wasn't easy, dude. And
No,
yeah,
dude.
a lot
you had
of
to
this
cross
terrain,
the fucking Colorado over here.
a lot of this terrain is just too hard to get to, and that's where
Vegas was a stop on the old Spanish Trail and the old Mormon Trail, and this was also a place where a lot of the natives migrated through, because there was natural springs here. There's an aquifer that's underneath.
Bonnie Springs, right? That's what that's called.
That's one of them, yeah. And then you have Good Springs. That's where the Mormons where they had their thing. But there was all throughout over here, even out in Overton and all that stuff like that. There was, but see, well, you know, what's funny is out in Overton they found an old Puebloan city, and that was, estimated to have like inhabited at least 25,000, but they said probably about 100,000 people, and it was a big marketplace way back. And they said different tradesmen and stuff would come through there, and they said it was like, you know, ancient Native Americans, but you know, there's supposedly the Basque and Polynesians and stuff.
Yeah,
you
see,
know,
that's another
made
thing.
their ways all the way out here, though.
Yeah, we have a very isolationist viewpoint on American history. You know, we think nobody came here, and the first one that did supposedly is Christopher Columbus. I mean, you can learn in the outside of school world, you know, or whatever, that it was Leif Erikson. But really, how far were the Vikings going? I just read in this book by Hans Holzer that they were going to Oklahoma and Minnesota. That they were coming that far
well,
in.
dude, that's why we have the Minnesota Vikings. But dude, the Minnesota is nothing but Swedish stock, dude. You know what I mean? And that comes down. It's funny, as on my grandparents' side, the last name's Pearson. That's Swedish. You know, and to me that was very foreign, because, you know, in California, when, you know, not a lot of Pearsons or whatever. You know, I go to Minnesota, dude, and it's like Pearson Law, Pearson, you know, Pearson's Burgers, Pearson and Sons. Like, everything was like, whoa, it's a very common. And you find out it's Pear Son. You know, you go all the way back to the Vikings and stuff like that.
There's been a lot of people visiting America.
No, totally. And you know what's crazy too is when you get into some like ancient history, and you get into like alien visitation, you know, and stuff. There's a lot within the Mormon religion about the stuff, about that stuff here in the Americas, in Northern America, and you're like, holy shit, dude! How come people don't put these histories together to connect, or maybe paint a picture, or to see who's right? Or is there something else to learn?
Definitely trippy, because they're the one philosophy that has room for pre-Columbus visitation, basically. You know, aside from the land bridge in Alaska to Russia, you know, where they say, you know, indigenous came. The Chinese were sailing to Mexico. You know, there's that Egyptian tomb supposedly found in the Grand Canyon that, you know, the Smithsonian was gotten in on. I mean, I'm sure you heard of that, right?
Yeah, dude. Well, that's the thing is, I didn't know it was Egyptian, but I know that there's like those cathedral you know, that like there's big
Inside-
taverns and stuff carved out.
inside the Grand Canyon
And-
walls.
Yeah, and you can't go.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like off limits. First, it's like really hard to get to. Like it's so hot. Like
People
you
think
need,
that's people think that's bullshit, but I was like, no, you can't go there. There's no access, first of all, and they go, I'm sure if
and
you get
it's
to a certain
dangerous.
point, I'm sure if you get to a certain point, someone's going to show up and say, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You know, because that's all national park where that is.
The coastline of California, you know, with the San Andreas fault line, when you go back 10,000 or whatever, 20,000 years ago, it's gone through a lot of earth changes. You know, it still moves to this day, you know, and a long time ago, the water used to go up to the Sierra Nevadas, and there was little rivers and stuff that sailed inland, you know, and that's how the Egyptians and Phoenicians, I heard the Indian, you know, East India. Why are they called Indians out here? You know, like, I think there's a connection between, you know, Columbus landed in the Caribbean and in Mexico. That's who he was calling Indians. It wasn't the Cherokee and the Mohawks. You know, he was saying like, oh, these are Indians, but
Because
it's
he
not
supposedly
that
got lost. That's the mainstream story.
It's not that he got lost. It's that he knew they were descended from India a long, long time ago. And concepts like the Maya is a word in India that means illusion. And like Nagas and Nagwals and stuff, like there's a big connection between India
Nagalas.
and a lot of places, man. India, you know, when we talk about Egypt, it's also very isolationist.
Well,
like
when
America.
you get into the thing is you get a very Asian look when you get into Native American, when you get into American Indians, and even Indians of the more what would be the Native American stock, but down in Mexico, you know, the people that have the more Native American look instead of the more Spaniard look down there, but they have a very Asian look
Yeah,
to them,
there's a
more
whole-
so than it would an Indian person, though. 'Cause they have more.
Yeah.
They have more. Even though they have almond eyes, they have a more of a roundish almond eye. They have a lot of white features, even though they're very dark.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
No, I know what you mean. And there's a lot of different populations that have been coming here, you know, before Columbus, but that's all buttoned up, you know, all of those possibilities. But, you know, some of the ruins that we found.
It
like,
shapes a narrative.
Yeah. There's no room in the mainstream Darwinist view for those visitations to happen. They say everybody came through Asia over the land bridge, you know, and that's where the Americans came from. But there's been people sailing here for a long time, you know, Egyptians, Chinese.
Well, you know, the thing is,
You
yeah,
name
no, that's true. And like I said, the Basque, the Polynesians, you know, or Phoenicians, you know, back in the days, they were, you know, Vikings. They visited this land. They had trade here. They did things here, right? But now you get into Columbus coming here, right, and stuff like that, and that shapes the narrative for, again, certain bloodlines and the conquest and also the pursuit in that empire building. And one of the things that, like, even though it was kind of lost on the surface, it's been regained through other controls, through secret societies, through banking,
Yep.
you know what I mean, through all that stuff. And you know what's weird is you all this conspiracy, all that stuff can be tied in, you know, to this. And it all sounds crazy. It all sounds whack, only if you don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't profess to know, but I know enough to know that it's true and it's interwoven and it's not just fantasy. You know, the fantasy
Yeah.
is, to me, is to not investigate it or to write it off as bullshit. You know, you write it off as bullshit when you know it's bullshit, you know? Because everything that I know, everything that I've seen that is bullshit, I didn't just say it was, and that was that. Like, I had to, because what happens is if someone, somehow, some way, that comes back, and that's the thing that kills my argument. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
That's the thing. We got to actually know. It's one thing to be told something, but when you know it, it's a very different story. And yeah, man, there's a lot of norms that pass as true, but we're believing in things that we've never even checked out for ourselves, and superimposed with other pieces of the puzzle, or other subjects that we know. And it's a very different story, man, when you put the pieces together for yourself and you see what pans out. And that Darwinist timeline of human origins, that's a big one, man. And same with Einsteinism, like how we look at the physical world and the consciousness type phenomena.
But even he was taken. Einstein, real quick. He was one that was all about looking at. Well, I don't want to say all about, but he too was like Tesla was saying. There's an energy. There's a force. He wasn't like an atheist. There's something.
Yeah.
There's the ethers. There's something to tap into that we need to. That's really gonna. He's like, I'm in on it. That allows me to do, because he was a visualization guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was constantly running over the formulas and stuff in his head before he would actually try to put it into any working theory, or what I mean, like. And
they've promoted him so much. He's kind of like the Christopher Columbus of science, where they just exaggerated what he was, or misconstrued what he was. But yeah, he was definitely a smart person, and he did a lot of the legwork on mathematics, and E = mc² is the most popular equation in the world, in history. But they kind of gave him the Charles Darwin treatment, where now this becomes academia, this line drawn in the dirt, which was like historically another blow against the spiritualist movement. That's when it was put down, like in the 30s and stuff. That was like the last trailing off of it. And so guys like Nikola Tesla and Einstein, they were from like when, historically that fight was going on. And what's a trippy part is that one of the one of the most visible scientists, because spiritualism was a scientific persuasion. There was like, doctors of science, of spiritualism leaning, that the physical world is an extension of your consciousness, like the Matrix. These people were thinking of the Matrix, So Charles Darwin and Einstein, they've both been kind of, like Eric Estrada, how he's turned into or Vanilla Ice, these people that they're turned into this image that they didn't really want to become, and it becomes something else. It takes on a life of its own. And in the college world, these are the religions now, the Darwinist timeline, the Einsteinist view of physical matter, and inertia and all of these things. And same with like the globe model, that came from Europe in the 1500s as a twist to the heliocentric movement, which is the notion that Earth went around the sun, because before that they thought the sun moved around. Right. Mm-hmm. So all of those three things became religious institutions. And
they did. And dude, and I've brought this up to people and I got attacked for it. I was like, but dude, you can't see, man, like, from the time when people were literate and they were just believing what the priest told them or the people that could read, you know what I mean? Like, or kind of like what's happening with a lot of these kids in these, being raised in these Islamic countries, these orphan kids, they're uneducated, but then they're indoctrinated by these people who are reading them the Quran, and they can't even read it, but they're preached it, and then they're taught to only, know so much, and they're shaping these minds. It's the same thing, dude. Yep. You're not in there doing the experiments. You're doing it, and then a lot of people like we might even be repeating ourselves on this, or I might be repeating ourselves. But dude, it's like you're gonna believe this. You're gonna believe these people you don't know that work for these companies that are funded by the certain. You know what I mean? Like, and I love this whole thing, peer review. As much as that is a good thing, that is also a way to censor. Yep. And to keep things out of the sphere. And people go, oh no, they wouldn't do that. Yeah, they would, because those are the only people who are in. Yep. And those are the people who are funding that stuff. And there was a guy that Joe Rogan had on, and there's a Graham Hancock. He's another one that talks about this stuff.
yeah.
But there's a guy that he had on, the dude.
Michael Shermer. He's the publisher of Skeptic Magazine. I think that's who you're talking about.
No,
right?
no. I was going to talk about the dude that that made the whole thing that AIDS, is just like a compromised immune system from partying or like exhaustion or something. He made this thing, and they made him out to be like this crazy, person, but he was the peer review. He was the top guy until he came out with this medical finding. Then they just, they destroyed him. Now he's broke. You know what I mean? But because he flew in the face of like big pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
that's what they do, man. And
so it's like all these people, they're like that are so tied in with the mainstream and everything. When you bring this up, they'll start throwing this stuff out, and it's like, dude, you can't just fully subscribe to that. It's not a bulletproof. You know what I mean? It's not a bulletproof thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of that stuff just won in the court of the public opinion. That was what I was gonna say. Well, Sir Alfred Wallace. Dang, I tried to get this out like 3 times and I keep losing it. But Sir Alfred Wallace is like the main like spiritualist scientist at the time, and
during what era?
The late 1800s.
Okay.
And he writes Charles Darwin a letter because he hears about Charles Darwin and what he's looking into and stuff, and he writes him a letter about basically natural selection. And Charles Darwin's in a predicament now. He's like, well, this dude basically described what I'm working on. And so he asked a friend what he should do. And he's like, invite him to co-author it with you. So the very first essay that Charles Darwin published with mentioning that was co-authored by Alfred Wallace. And
so
they down the line, they ended up being on different sides, the spiritualist movement versus the Darwinist movement. But they have such a common origin as like Spider-Man and Venom, with the first essay being co-authored by both of them. You know what I mean? It's a crazy story. And the 1800s, man, I can't stress that enough. Like, so many industries changed, astronomy, navigation.
Well, so much major work out of that.
Yep. Automobiles, diesel or alcohol prohibition, that's where all the beginning of the 1900s, when we had, the Roaring 20s, World War I, and the Depression, and even World War II, or even the moon landing, all of those things were a response to what happened in the late 1800s, and they weren't just spontaneous historical events. And that's why a lot of people think of the moon landing like, oh, that just happened on time, not knowing that was a response to what happened in the late 1800s with the flat earth movement on a tradesman type level. There's a lot of back and forth. It's not just an isolated incident, and you can't understand what the 1900s meant without looking at the 1800s and what led up.
Well, you know what I was saying there a little bit earlier in this, which we should probably get close to wrapping up, dude. We've been champing on this one, but that how this world that we have has been planned, it's been shaped, it's been created this way by this, and people are like, oh, but here's the thing: when you're talking about what's been happening in these times comes from the 1800s. It's exactly what's going on, because you have these people, you have these businesses, these industries, these royalties, we have all this stuff. They have, for some reason, 70, 50, 75, 100, 150 year plans to shape. Now, why would anybody devise a plan that's going to be, they're never going to see its completion? And then I have a couple of theories behind this. One, because they know their progeny and all that stuff is going to, whatever. Or two, which, when you get into these high levels with these elite people and all stuff like that, and you get into these secret societies and stuff like that, they believe in a way of not only reincarnation, but staying within those same bloodlines. So they'll come back within and still be in control within the systems of control, or they'll be, within the systems of control via the bloodlines. And that's why you have that's why you have a lot of these people. They're all into this crazy shit, and and that's why they do these things you do. Because, dude, if you look at it, like, why would you logically hatch a plan to run 100 years, and you're not even going to be able to see it? You don't even know if it's going to be completed after you go. But you've put these plans in place, and you're putting all these systems in it. You're having, and this isn't a plan that you can just make for like just you. This is something that affects a whole society, affects a whole people, and these plans are like for this growth. Insurance companies and shit.
Yeah.
People that own these insurance companies have like these 100-year plans of fucking, like, what the fuck, dude?
Yep.
You know?
No, you're right. And I guess, like the Manly P. Hall type answer would be that it's the philosophers, like the secret societies behind the secret societies, like they feel it's the thing to do, that they want you to have a neutral platform to experience life on, where you could possibly be initiated into this great wisdom, because they've went into underground for its own protection. Because if everybody had this wisdom, this is from their point of view, it's not necessarily my opinion, but this is Manly P. Hall like outlook.
Oh man, wife's laying into the kids right now, dude. I wonder if that comes through on the deal. No, she's dropping the hammer. Oh man, let's just keep talking.
There also comes a point where
Rome's burning,
where you gotta let go of the things you'll never know. You know what I mean? There's like certain cosmic evils or whatever, or what's going on that's outside of your control. There's a point where like you can't do everything, and you gotta like fall back and reassess what's important to you as a responsible human, or however you define that, and that was where my David Icke awakening kind of, not that I went back to sleep, but it kind of concluded when I started reading some of these books from India translated by that guy Prabhupada. It helped me look at life in a way where my responsibility would be like owning 10 acres of property. If you own 10 acres of land, your job as a decent homeowner is to keep that maintained, to mow your lawn and to keep the trash off of it, to keep it tidy how you feel you should, and sometimes your neighbor's yard might get overgrown, or you might not like how they painted their house or something like that, but that's not your lawn to mow. There's a point where you got to let go. This is where my fence is at. Those things outside of my fence aren't my problem. And that, for a guy that gets their mind blown, you might be drawn in a lot of different directions, and you might spin your wheels, you might not, but there's a point, for me at least, where, like from that movie Hero, the ultimate ideal of every soldier, or the soldier's ultimate ideal, is to one day hang up your sword and know peace. So if you become a researcher, there should be like a point where you make peace with all these things that you learned. And for me, I'm not asking anybody else to believe this, but when I read 3 of Prabhupada's books, like the Bhagavad Gita, these are some of the oldest writings on earth.
Yep.
And symbolically, it was written in a way that helped me reach this realization that the meaning of life, for me, as far as I'm concerned, the meaning of life is to address your personal responsibilities while letting go of the things that aren't your responsibility to address. Because to concern yourself with things that aren't your responsibility is to distract yourself from addressing the things that actually are. That's it right there. That's the meaning of life as far as I'm concerned, to be a decent human. And like that Navy admiral said, if you want to change the world, start with making your bed. I think there's some wisdom in that, and that's what helped me make peace with all the lies and all the evils in the world, all the messed up stuff, like these 100-year wars, they're really bad and can depress you if you look at them, and but you could transcend that and make peace with it. And
sadly, dude, there's the ripple of a negativity that the vibration of negativity right now is dominating, and apathy. But I think there's there's slow awakening, and I think um, mediums like this, from podcasting and YouTube videos and social media, done the right way, it kind of it's there to combat that and maybe bring it, swing the pendulum back the other way as far as or shielding. I don't want to say swing it back because that means it's going to go way crazy one way, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Temper it, and bring people into a higher vibration, a little bit more elevated way of thinking and living. Because, dude, right now, man, one of my big things is, being. I'm just as big a Michael Tessarian guy as I am a David Icke guy, and he's like, dude, solution think. That's the change of the world.
Yeah.
There's none of that. Everybody's got problem think. We need solution think.
And that book by Esther Hicks, Asking It Is Given, I think if you genuinely ask the universe, that you will get an answer, but a lot of people aren't listening.
It's true.
Know? And just because you're not listening doesn't mean it's not saying anything, and you'll find those coincidences in your life if you just pay attention, and you could experience some great paranormal things.
Well, dude, I'll tell you what, man, like just being, this is back in the day. This is like, but I reached a point, dude, where I was just like, I just want to be happy, but I just want to know the truth. I just want to know what's real in the world. I just want to know the truth. And all of a sudden, everything just started opening up to me. You know what I mean? Like, everything is just like, from the whole unlearning all the way down to, even, doing the paranormal and all that stuff, dude. It just really started, getting me into vibrating with, like, who I am. But, dude, yeah, we're gonna wrap this up, man.
Sounds good.
We're 224 in the fucking can, baby.
Yeah.
Woo. Man, guys, if you machoed this whole thing, you are a fucking trooper, son. Absolutely, we've been cranking out like 2 hours, like it's fucking nothing lately, dude. 'Cause, dude, again, the art of conversation, man. I just love fucking just talking about this and expressing and putting shit out there, dude. But Miklo, where can people find you if you want them to find you?
Check out ghosttownooperations.net and dinnerwithaghost.com, and we're coming to a town near you, and we'll take you.
Taking requests, dude. If you got something, right? If you've got something to fucking make it fucking happen, right?
If you know a historical location with paranormal activity, hit us up, let us know, and
dude,
might come out. And
dude, I gotta get you. We gotta get you into to the studio. That was one of the reasons why I want to do it. Our studio's haunted, dude.
Okay.
There is. I witnessed paranormal activity. The last podcast we did, but I'm talking that place will get fucking. And I'm not just saying, oh, get ice cold, dude. It'll be fucking hot in there, and then it'll be in summertime, and then it'll just get freezing cold in there, and then like weird shit happens with the electrical.
Hey, activity happens,
Yeah, dude. No, the last time we did the podcast, the fucking lights did this crazy flicker, and then they changed, and it got freezing cold in the fucking place, and then we started talking about it, and then the temperature went back.
In my experience, electronics seem the first to go. Like when you're gonna have some activity, those are usually the first things to start acting weird. And
well, dude, Mikey's got like stories up the yang, like the crazy shit that's like, as far as the lights going on in the other room, but the power switch ain't working and shit, dude, and then fucking flick on and off when like it's time to leave and shit, dude. Like, whoa. But dude, that light, like he even said, he goes, you see that crazy pattern? Like a pattern came from the flickered light, and we both looked over, and then the light changed colors to these LEDs. It's crazy, dude. But yeah, I want you to go there. But yeah, so ghosttownooperations.net,
dinnerwithaghost.com. Hit us up.
Hell yeah, dude. And no Twitter handle, no.
I don't even want you to follow me on Facebook. If you see me, just leave me be.
I hear you, dude. I hear you on that. Well, guys, I just want to say thank you very much, and we're gonna have Miklo on again. Hopefully, we'll be in the studio, so we might be able to have a little. We'll 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 hopefully, I think his name's Frank. Frank show up, give a little a little cameo or something. Yeah, guys, thank you so much. We'll get everything out. You can follow us, Facebook. Me on Facebook, Trez Mala. Even my personal page, Trevor Trez Mala. I don't give a shit. Just get ready for some heat. Just know I'm on there with this shit. All right, we just talked about. And routine. We're ThinkStopper on Instagram, ThinkStopper, or Trez Mala as well as on Instagram, and then you can catch us on Steam It, Trez Mala at Steam It. That's where that's everywhere. That's where everything is going to be going, 100%. Once I figure it fucking out, guys. Thank you so much. ThinkStopper over now.